This episode of Trifles is brought to you by listeners like you, who support us on Patreon and Substack. To learn more, go to patreon.com/trifles or trifles.substack.com.
Welcome to Trifles, a weekly podcast about the Sherlock Holmes stories.
It is, of course, a trifle, but there is nothing so important as trifles.
Yes, the band was speckled and there were 6 Napoleons, but there are so many other details to pick apart in the stories.
Pray, be precise as to details.
You know the plots, but what about the minutiae? Have you ever stopped to wonder about why Dr. Watson was called James by his wife? Or of Sherlock Holmes' dining habits? Or what happened when he let a criminal escape?
You are very inquisitive, Mr. Holmes.
It is my business to know what other people don't know.
Scott Monty and Burt Wolder will have the answers to these questions and more in Trifles.
The game's afoot.
Episode 443, How Watson Learned the Trick. Well, hello and welcome to Trifles, the Sherlock Holmes podcast, where we get into the details in the Sherlock Holmes stories. I'm Scott Monty.
I'm Burt Wolder.
Burt, have you learned a few tricks yourself?
Oh, I certainly have. I can make myself
Oh, will he be back? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll never know. What's behind this curtain?
Oh, it's me. Pay no attention.
Oh, goodness. Well, this is the third in our series looking at the Apocrypha of Sherlock Holmes. We are going through the Sherlock Holmes Reference Library volume that has all, my goodness, how many were there? 9 different pieces of Apocrypha that we're getting through. 8. So we are almost halfway through. We've had a little bit of a pause, but we wanted to pick it back up again with this, which is an interesting one because it is probably it is definitely the shortest entry in the Apocrypha. And it also happens to be, if you're counting, the 54th Sherlock Holmes story in order. Whether it is accepted into that official order or not is a matter of debate, but that's why we're here. It's just a trifle. In the meantime, wanted to remind you that if you'd like to support the show, you can do that in a variety of ways. The 2 easiest are on Patreon or on Substack. For as little as $1 a month, you can count yourself as a fellow supporter of this fine program. What you contribute allows us to do the research and put in the work and pay the costs for putting on this show. We appreciate your support. Why don't you check both options out, see what's right for you at patreon.com/trifles and trifles.substack.com. Well, Burt, we threatened to land on people once again with another apocryphal Sherlock Holmes story. What do we have in store this time?
Well, we have one of the few bits of Apocrypha that Conan Doyle wrote, and there's no question about that actually feature Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, as opposed to stories that people have associated with Holmes because of the nature of the story and the fact that his abilities seem to be generally related to the action that's going on. But this one is fascinating because it was written in 1922. Now, just to remind our listeners, Conan Doyle would die 8 years later, so this is very late in his
writing. No spoilers.
Very, very late in his writing career. And what happens here is that the royal family, Princess Mary Louise, a granddaughter of Queen Victoria, had launched a plan to construct an elaborate doll's house as a gift from the people of Britain to Queen Mary, the wife of King George V. And Princess Mary Louise was a friend of Mary of Teck, who became the wife of King George V. Rather oddly, because born and raised in London, Mary was the daughter of the Duke of Teck, a German nobleman, and a granddaughter of King George III, Princess Mary Adelaide of Cambridge. And she was, at the age of 24, she was actually engaged to her second cousin once removed, Prince Albert, the Duke of Clarence, Prince Albert Victor, Duke of Clarence and Avondale, who was the second in line to the throne. But 6 weeks after their engagement was announced, he died. And so the following year, she became engaged to Albert Victor's only surviving brother, George, who subsequently became George V. So this is the rough idea. And she was the queen consort from 1910 right through the First World War. And so what happens is her friend here, Princess Mary Louise, a granddaughter of Victoria, had launched a plan to construct this doll's house because this was, a particular interest and hobby and sort of passion of Mary. And what happens is, a call has gone out. Princess Mary Louise sends out letters of request to Britain's most celebrated men of letters. Because what's happening here is they're building an actual 1/12 scale royal mansion with all of the rooms and all of the things you think would be in there, a well-stocked wine cellar and a library. And so letters go out to James Barrie, Joseph Conrad, Thomas Hardy, Rudyard Kipling, Somerset Maugham, asking each to contribute little books in the autograph of their writers, and each author was provided with a small blank book for the purpose. So Conan Doyle laboriously writes out all 34 tiny pages, each barely an inch and a quarter wide, this story called How Watson Learned the Trick. And when he's finished, the little book is bound in red leather to take its place on the royal bookshelf.
And we will have photos of that book for folks to take a look at, as well as a link to the Royal Collection Trust website of the Doll's House. It's worth noting that the architect was Sir Edwin Lutyens, who was a friend of Princess Mary Louise, and between them, they had created a committee to decide on the style of the house and make sure that the contents were all of the highest possible quality. And the finished product, as they collected contributions from people like Conan Doyle, the completed house was the product of 250 craftspeople and manufacturers, 60 artist decorators, 700 artists, 600 writers, and 500 donors. And the house was shown at the Empire Exhibition at Wembley in 1924 as a showcase for British workmanship. And it was there for 7 months before being moved to Windsor Castle, where it was situated in a room designed by Lutyens. And it can be seen there today. It's now been there for exactly 100 years. So why don't we turn our attention to the story itself? Since it is so short, we thought we might share it with you and offer some commentary along the way here. So, Bert, would you care to lead us off?
34 tiny pages. Where is my magnifying glass? Can you imagine him writing all this out? Well, how Watson learned the trick. Watson had been watching his companion intently ever since he had sat down to the breakfast table. Holmes happened to look up and catch his eye. "Well, Watson, what are you thinking about?" he asked.
About you.
Keep going, yes.
No, go ahead. You be Holmes.
Oh. "Well, Watson, what are you thinking about?"
About you.
"Me?"
Yes, Holmes. I was thinking how superficial are these tricks of yours, and how wonderful it is that the public should continue to show interest in them.
I quite agree. In fact, I have a recollection that I have myself made a similar remark.
Your methods are really easily acquired.
Oh, no doubt. Perhaps you will yourself give an example of this method of reasoning.
With pleasure. I'm able to say that you were greatly preoccupied when you got up this morning.
Excellent. How could you possibly know that?
Because you're usually a very tidy man. Yet, you've forgotten to shave.
Oh, dear me, how very clever. I had no idea, Watson, that you were so apt a pupil. Has your eagle eye detected anything more?
Yes, Holmes. You have a client named Barlow, and you have not been successful with his case.
Oh, dear me, how could you know that?
You saw the name outside his envelope. When you opened it, you gave a groan, thrust it into your pocket with a frown on your face.
Admirable. You are indeed observant. Any other points?
I fear, Holmes, that you've taken to financial speculation.
Oh, how could you tell that, Watson?
Well, you opened your paper, turned to the financial page, gave a loud exclamation of interest.
Well, that is very clever of you, Watson. Any more?
Oh, yes, Holmes. You put on your black coat instead of your dressing gown, which proves you're expecting some important visitor at once.
Anything more?
Well, I have no doubt I could find other points, Holmes, but I only give you these few in order to show you that there are other people in the world who can be as clever as you.
And some not so clever. I admit that they are few, but I'm afraid, my dear Watson, that I must count you among them.
What do you mean, Holmes?
Well, my dear fellow, I fear your deductions have not been so happy as I should have wished.
You mean that I was mistaken?
Oh, just a little that way, I fear. Let us take the points in their order. I did not shave because I've sent my razor to be sharpened. I put on my coat because I have. Worse luck, an early meeting with my dentist. His name is Barlow, and the letter was to confirm the appointment. The cricket page is beside the financial one, and I turned to it to find if Surrey was holding its own against Kent. But go on, Watson, go on. It's a very superficial trick, and no doubt you will soon acquire it.
Well, I mean, how charming that this little vignette of Holmes and Watson, and it's so easy to imagine that these conversations may have gone on from time to time at 221B Baker Street.
It really is interesting. And it's like so much of Conan Doyle that it begins in the Baker Street sitting room and it starts with dialogue. The only thing that's unique about the opening is that it's two sentences in the third person, or in the narrator's, or in the omniscient narrator's unusual voice, because we never have that, because Watson is telling us all of the information about Sherlock Holmes, but not here. And so we have the opening. Watson had been watching his companion intently ever since he'd sat down to the breakfast table. Holmes happened to look up and catch his eye. It's sort of like a stage direction.
Indeed. So one of the footnotes is, and perhaps you were taken aback a little bit to hear Holmes show some interest in sport, in this case, cricket. And the footnote from the Sherlock Holmes Reference Library, and this is annotations by Les Klinger. He writes, in the Field Bazaar, Holmes states, and remember the Field Bazaar was the first episode in this Apocrypha series that we did. And you can go back and check that out. In the Field Bazaar, Holmes states that his knowledge of cricket clubs is small. It seems clear then that the events recounted here occurred after 1896, when the conversation recorded in the Field Bazaar almost certainly occurred. While it's impossible to date the scene depicted in How Watson Learned the Trick with any accuracy, it seems likely that it predates Holmes's retirement in 1903 and occurs during a period of joint occupancy of Baker Street. So this means that it occurred before Watson's second marriage, which is generally assigned to 1902. So even in the Apocrypha, we get down this rabbit hole of chronology. I find that interesting.
Yeah. Well, also, the Field Bazaar, as we mentioned earlier, some of this is one of the two stories that Conan Doyle actually wrote with Holmes and Watson in them that count sort of as Apocrypha, and the other one is the Field Bazaar. But in that footnote, Les goes on to say, in the missing three-quarter, Holmes says, "My ramifications stretch out into many sections of society, but never, I am happy to say, into amateur sport, which is the best and soundest thing in England." Well, I guess that's Holmes saying, since amateur sport is good and sound, it doesn't need my own particular talents to solve crimes, which is a generally positive thing.
Well, maybe he was interested in professional sport.
Oh, now that's a very good point. Yeah, he certainly knew boxing. Interesting.
As you know, once a month we do a drawing for all of our paid supporters. We put your names into a big barrel and give it a spin, looking around to see whose name is going to fall out as the barrel stops spinning. And it looks like this month it belongs to Donald During. Don, congratulations. We will be sending you a back issue of the Baker Street Journal. Thanks for your support.
Well, there we go. And for those of you who are worried about whether or not Surrey did hold its own, Les tells us, although Surrey was the county champion in 1894 and 1895, it did not win the championship again until 1899. And the club then began a long decline, winning only one championship in the next 50 years in 1914.
And that, indeed, is some kind of trifle.
It is, of course, a trifle, but there is nothing so important as trifles.
Please join us again next week for another installment of Trifles. Show notes are available on SherlockHolmesPodcast.com. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and be sure to check out our longer show, I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, where we interview notable Sherlockians and share news of the Sherlockian world.
You've taken my breath away, Mr. Holmes.
Do you think he'll come back?
He is sure to come back. He must come back.